cannot negate our sole contention is a lethal prescription for the world's poor. According to suit of USC, because price controls would lower drug prices, they would also reduce the overall revenues of American pharmaceutical companies by 26%. This harms the developing world in 3 ways. First, by reducing research. According to Lowell Ryerson University, high American drug prices have allowed drug companies to spend 2/3 of their additional revenues on global research and development. Specifically, the AMF reports that research on diseases that primarily afflict the developing world has doubled over the last decade, with big pharmaceutical companies like Novartis and Merck devoting half their R&D spending to these high-priority, low-profit drugs. This trend is crucial, as the IPI quantifies that these newly researched drugs and vaccines will save 9 million lives over the next 25 years. However, according to Vernon of UPenn, with price controls, drug companies will be forced to cut R&D by 48% in response to lower revenues, with Forbes specifying that research on these neglected diseases will be cut first, since it yields the lowest profits as the population it assists is poorer. Most importantly, Finkelstein of MIT finds that research on vaccines, critical for the developing world, will be reduced, as every 1% decrease in drug companies' revenue lowers the number of vaccines sold on the market by 3%. This is significant, as the NIH quantifies that every new vaccine for the developing world reduces mortality rates 24%. Second, by cutting donations. Right now, according to Meisen of Syracuse University, drug companies donate a fixed 13% of their annual profits. Meisen explains that these donations go primarily to the developing world, where they are used to set up medical facilities, hire staff, and provide plenty of free medicines and vaccines. According to Forbes, the largest drug companies are the most philanthropic, with Pfizer giving away a fifth of its donation earnings every year, and other major drug companies following close behind. These donations are meaningful, as just last year, Pfizer alone sent tens of millions of free prescriptions to the developing world, allowing 248 million people to have access to essential medicines. Haque of the University of Malaysia furthers that 4 countries depend on these donations, with 20% of their state-run health facilities receiving all their medicine from them. Unfortunately, Mello of Stanford writes that as price controls decrease companies' total revenue, the fixed 13% they donate will be considerably reduced. Third, by decreasing affordability. According to Commodore of UCLA, high drug prices in the U.S. subsidize low drug prices in the developing world. This is because drug sales in the American market alone generate enough profit to allow companies to charge low humanitarian prices in poorer countries. This practice is known as tiered pricing, and has seen widespread adoption in the pharma industry, as most companies are willing to sacrifice some profit to improve their image and give impoverished populations access to otherwise expensive medicines. Commodore quantifies that due to high American prices, developing countries pay just 3% of what America pays for essential medicines and less than 20% for all other prescription drugs. Thus, the IEA finds that overall, tiered pricing increases global access to drugs by 4 to 7 times. Unfortunately, Mello writes that as pharma companies lose revenue under price controls, they would compensate by raising prices in the developing world. The IEA reports that if drug companies sought to raise revenues by just charging the price that would allow them to break even in the developing world, global access to drugs will decrease by 23%. Flynn of American University explains that access could be limited even further, since poorer countries have high income inequality, which would allow drug companies to maximize profits by charging excessive prices to the rich at the expense of access for the poor. Flynn quantifies that if companies took this approach, 51% of the population will lose access to drugs. According to the WHO, since there are few effective healthcare programs in the developing world, 90% of people pay for drugs out of pocket, meaning that even small price spikes can force families to choose between abandoning treatment or paying for the drug by selling an asset or pulling a child from school, burying their family in intergenerational poverty. Overall, Mello confirms that price controls will be a zero-sum game, where any gain for Americans constitutes a loss for those in the developing world. Thus, we negate it.
Is everybody ready? Alright, so before I begin, there are a few people I would like to thank. So first and foremost, my mom, Lee Fay. Thank you for letting me use your money to go on these trips every other weekend. You are just as committed to this activity as I am. Without you, I wouldn't be here. Your love for me extends beyond debate, and I'm beyond grateful for your everlasting support. I love you. Second to my coaches, first Mr. Clemens. As daunting as he looks and as frightening as his driving skills are, he is such a caring and driven man. Fun. In all seriousness, Thank you for your continual support throughout this year and my entire debate career. You have become a great mentor for me, but more importantly, a friend. Next is Mr. Washer. Since our first novice workshop, I knew that his coaching would be absolutely invaluable, so thanks to him. Next, that guy, Nivesh Konani. For my appreciation of you, I composed the haiku. Very smelly man, thank you for all your nice skills. You sometimes do cry. But seriously, thanks for spending hours upon hours to make sure we're prepared for any term we go into and make sure that we pay you back for McDonald's and deep dish pizza. Your grit and genuine passion to help others is proven in our success. Without you, we couldn't have achieved nearly as much success as we do now. Also to Max Wu, he isn't here, but good luck on his midterm today. I love you and thank you for always responding when the bench doesn't. Third, my teammates and friends, so Lo Cucaracha, Andrew and Albie, their honorary teammates, Ishan, Dhruva, Nikhil, John, Siddharth, Max, Vishal, and Sadaki. Thank you for always making tournaments so much more enjoyable and helping me when I need you the most. I love you guys to the moon and back. Fourth and finally, Anush. So besides my family, you're by far the only person I spend the most time of my life with. In my first year debate, I could have picked any partner of the entire litter. I chose you, and I honestly couldn't be happier with my decisions. You may cut all the cards, write all the cases, and do all the prep, but just remember that I'm the only one that extended link in half round, in the back half of the round. I love you, and thank you for being on my side in and out of debate. You're the best companion I can ask for, but seriously, please extend the link. Okay, I'll have this. We affirm, and our sole contention is driving down prices. Currently, American drug prices are artificially inflated to dangerous levels. The end of the American Prospect in 2017 notes that high drug prices in America are linked to a handful of pharmaceutical monopolies who manipulate the market in order to eradicate competition and maintain their iron grip over American consumers. Blumenthal, the Commonwealth Fund, in 2018 furthers that federally enforced patent laws have created government-sanctioned monopolies by outlawing competition, allowing big pharmaceutical companies to game the system and keep drugs expensive. As a result, the National Center for Policy Analysis in 2017 finds that over the past few years, even the price of generic drugs has increased at unprecedented rates, with over 1,000 increasing by 500%. Moreover, the International Federation of Health Plans in 2015 finds that Americans pay drug prices up to 6 times as much as other developed countries. This trend shows no sign of stopping, as Stahl of the Congressional Research Service in 2018 projects that prescription drugs will increase by 6% every year over the next decade. The solution is simple. To control the skyrocketing price of pharmaceuticals, the U.S. should adopt price controls. As Pettinger of Oxford in 2017 explained, price controls mean that firms aren't allowed to set prices above a certain level, leading to lower prices for consumers. This is empirically validated, as the American Journal of Managed Care in 2015 finds that European countries that impose price controls, such as Germany, Spain, and Italy, saw the price of pharmaceuticals decrease by up to 24%. Thus, Jenna V. Hill in 2018 argues that the reason foreign pharmaceutical prices are far lower than American prices is because nearly all of those countries except America have policies to regulate drug costs. And due to America's uniquely high prices, this effect will be especially pronounced. Acosta, the Cochrane Library, quantifies in 2014 that reference pricing will reduce drug costs in the United States by up to 39%. Importantly, ending price gouging also opens the market to further competition. As Engelberg of the Journal of Health Affairs in 2017 explains, the pharmaceutical industry exploits existing market failures to avoid competition, directing tens of billions of dollars in excess profits into mergers and acquisitions, as well as payments to physicians to convince them to prescribe patented drugs over effectively identical generics. These price controls wipe out the capital used to exploit these smaller businesses. Brecht of the Norwegian School of Economics in 2015 finds that their introduction increases the profitability, entry, and demand for generic alternatives, decreasing the market share of monopolies by 37%. Acosta thus concludes that price controls increase the use of generic drugs by 55%, making the market permanently more competitive. Lowering drug prices is key for increasing access. When drug prices are high, many are faced with a choice of either forgoing the prescription or going into debt. McGrath of Forbes in 2016 confirms that 62% of Americans don't have enough savings to cover a $500 emergency medical expense. As a result, DART of the PJ Institute quantifies that within the last year alone, 45 million Americans did not fulfill their prescriptions due to overwhelming costs. The human impact cannot be ignored. Isaacs of the Healthcare Institute in 2014 writes that poor medication adherence causes 1/3 of all hospital admissions and 125,000 deaths every single year. These high prices for prescription drugs spill over into the healthcare system as a whole, driving up the price of insurance premiums. The Milliman Research Institute in 2018 finds that high drug prices account for nearly 25% of insurance premium costs. Thus, Cutler v. NCBI in 2005 quantifies that that a 2% increase in medical costs could cause up to 6 million additional Americans to be uninsured in the following 5 years. Even when Americans manage to purchase these drugs, the costs they incur push them deeper into debt and further into poverty. Weissman of Slate magazine confirms that in 2016, medical expenses drove 11.2 million Americans into poverty. Crucially, poverty hurts long-term health, which is why Columbia University in 2016 concludes that poverty is the leading cause of death in America. Yeah.
Is there any way that your case links into this?
Yes. Neutral get onto that and vote.
Can you just point out where?
Yeah, we link in.
Like where in your case or the
Oh, it just responses on your page.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah. So in your third warrant, you talk about how corporations are going to the developing world. So why are they doing that?
Two reasons. Number one, recently there's been like a UN push for them to increase welfare and development.
When does a
The
pharmaceutical
second, can I
company...
get to the second reason?
Go ahead.
The second reason is they're charging low prices so that they can gain a long-term foothold in these markets. They're
They-
called developing countries because eventually they'll be developed. They wanna
Wait,
make
so
sure
I just
they're
want to be
developing.
clear that one of your reasons is because they want to go into the developing country to establish a foothold in creating a market.
That's true over the long run. But we tell
Okay,
you that when
so-
their revenues decrease by 26%, they start to look to the
Here's the-
short term and they want to jack up prices to make a lot
I
of money.
would say that the only reason why investors look into the short term in terms of revenue is if that industry is inherently unprofitable. But that's not the case if you said in the long term they're going to establish a foothold and there's going to be
I just disagree with you. And
No,
our
no,
evidence
if you're-
disagrees
if
with
you're-
you as well.
no,
We
no,
tell
if
you that
you're
if they
arguing-
lose a lot of revenue, they will jack up prices.
Yeah.
That's what Mello of Stanford tells us.
Okay,
If
so
you're an
then what-
investor, you're not going to say, oh, I
Then-
just lost half my profit margin, but I'm still going to
Okay.
go for this long-term, potentially risky investment.
Yeah, so
no,
tell
you're
me,
going to jack
so
up
then
prices to
tell me,
get
tell
back
me
to the
what
former
happened,
profit margins.
and tell me what happened in Rwanda.
Rwanda?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what happened in Rwanda.
The same exact thing you said. They went abroad to lower
Yeah.
prices, they established a foothold in the
Wait,
market,
like this is
and now...
hyper specific. We're telling you across the
Yeah,
hub.
it's just an example.
That example isn't even like that well fleshed out. You just tell me like company was in Rwanda, they increased
Yeah,
prices.
I'm just
they
saying
probably
that it's-
lost some money too, like wherever they were
Well,
selling.
I mean, in the end of the day, it was still profitable. So
that's just not fleshed out enough. Can I ask you a question?
what?
All right,
Yeah,
can
okay.
we talk
Yeah,
about
go
your
ahead.
case. Let's move on.
Sure.
So on monopolies. So let's take a big business and a small business. Both take a hit in their profits. Who's going to be able to like deal with that better?
Probably bigger businesses, right?
Okay, so if there's a price control and the pharmaceutical industry on the whole loses money, and big businesses losing money, small businesses
Well, I mean,
losing
here's the
money,
thing,
you
though.
just told me the small businesses
So
are going to
you're
be
gonna
hurt a lot
make this-
more than like the big businesses that can deal with that.
You're going to make
revenue
this
loss.
barrier of entry argument, right? But there's things to consider in terms of like barrier of entry,
Not
right?
just barrier of entry, like
That
going
was
bankrupt.
what your argument
No,
was.
both. Like
That's a
small
barrier of
businesses
entry. Going bankrupt is a barrier of entry.
No, because you're already in the market and then you leave because you put that.
Yeah, but that also means that future small businesses can't go.
Yeah, both.
But here's
those
the thing,
things are
alright,
true.
that's beside the point, right? Your argument is that in our world, there's just slightly less profit margins, right?
Not
But,
slightly, 26%.
so then how many small businesses went out of the market in India or any other country where we post price controls?
Like the U.S. has.
None of them.
What are you
None of them
talking
went
about?
out.
Like there's like hardly a pharmaceutical industry that's like booming in India. It's like quite small. And
No,
in Europe,
you
there's
should
not like
say
an
that
enormous
small
pharmaceutical
businesses.
industry.
Okay, then
In
I'm
the
going to
U.S.,
say
there's tons
I'm
of
going
small
to say that
businesses
your
that
argument
exist.
is not flushed out. We were going to say that in the status quo, the barrier of entry is that monopolies kick out small businesses. They pay
No,
to the
stop,
they
stop,
merge
like,
and acquire.
stop turning back to evidence and like India examples. Let's
I'm
just
just
engage
saying-
on the logical warrants.
That was
If
logic.
all
I just used
firms,
evidence to
if all
support my
firms
logic.
are losing profits, small firms are hurt more because they have less overall money
In
in their
both
bank
worlds,
account.
in both worlds, right? Yours
You
is
can
comparatively
see that.
worse in terms of barriers of entry.
Why?
Because they're dealing with
with
monopoly.
So I'm going to start on weighing, and then I'm going to move on to this. Start on weighing. This resolution asks us not what America would do, but what America should do. We contend America ought to take a paradigm of global altruism that's helping those that need it most. We tell you that's the developing world for 3 reasons. One, because pharmaceuticals matter a lot more to them because they're less likely to access doctors, health clinics, and other means of treatment. For that reason, Johnson, the Washington Post tells you just 10% of U.S. health spending is on pharmaceuticals compared to 67% in developing countries. The second of all is because people in developing world are far less likely to have health insurance or government programs to provide that. For that reason, 90% of their drug costs are out of pocket compared to 9% in America. So the list price of drugs is going to matter a lot more in a country where you shoulder the entire burden of the cost. But then third of all, because people in the developing world are simply poor. Every $1 increase or decrease in cost matters a lot more if you're making $1 a day versus $8 an hour. Then go to their case. First of all, they tell you that there are monopolies that are increasing generic prices in the status quo. But according to Weingarten and Forbes, still, 90% of American prescriptions are still generic, which are 85% cheaper than like brand name drugs. But then they tell you that like 5 generics are increasing like 500%. They don't look at the overall trend. But the GDO analyzes says prices overall for generics are decreasing 59%. And large companies are going to try to make them cheaper in the next few years, 75% cheaper for low-income Americans. We see this already, with Walmart making all the generics just $4 per prescription, and other chains like CVS and Target following suit. But then even beyond that, they tell you right now that their solvency on this is that they're going to be breaking up monopolies. They don't give you a real link. They just say they have less capital to do like mergers and like pay-for-delay schemes. But we tell you, crucially, that these things are inherently profitable. To pay off somebody, not create a generic, increases your market share and profit over the, like right now. We tell you that when you're looking to create short-term returns after short-term losses, you're going to keep the things that keep those short-term returns high, like having a patent. You're instead going to cut things that only can yield long-term returns, things like develop your initiatives for cheap drugs in the developing world. But then further, specifically on pay-for-delay, according to Brennan of RF, a 2013 Supreme Court decision ruled they could not pay off other generic manufacturers or doctors in order to not prescribe generic drugs, and as such, it has been cut in half since then. And NPR tells you that 45% of the biggest blockbuster drugs are going to go off patent in the next few years. The trend is away from monopolism, not in favor of it. But then you're going to be turning monopolies in 2 ways. First, because as we can see in Crossfire, price controls are going to hurt small businesses more than large businesses. This is crucial because we tell you you're going to shift according to Forbes, you shift investment away from small biotech startups into like tech startups and other unregulated industries. In fact, the Guardian BU tells you decrease the probability of investment by 59% in these small businesses. That's really crucial because small pharma is like what helps break up these monopolies. Because if you have more small businesses, the monopolies shrink, and when you cut those small businesses out, the monopolies get bigger. But then according to Dan Smith, the NPR, you turn it in another way because they increase mergers when they lose revenue, because when they have financial losses, they want to group together so they can withstand them. That's really bad because their whole solvency is they have like less mergers. We tell you they merge more when they lose money, and as such, the world gets a lot worse for them because when they merge more, the market share goes up. And okay, so then they try to tell you. Wait, okay, yeah. But then don't let them link it to the developing world with monopolies. This is why. First, because according to science, because according to the conversation, the WTO created a waiver to avoid all patents in the developing world until 2033 with the possibility of an indefinite extension. And second of all, according to the WTO, 95% of the drugs needed in the developing world are already off patent. That's really important because we tell you that even if they can break up patent monopolies, in the end, you do not help the developing world, which, as I said, is the framework to which we view the round. But then they tell you their first impact is adherence. They tell you right now, like 125,000 deaths are a result of non-adherence, and that it's a third of hospitalizations. But according to NPR, just 10% of this non-adherence is actually due to cost. There are a lot of other reasons why people aren't taking drugs in the status quo. But then again, they tell you that premiums are going to go down when you have lower prices. But as I said, only 10% of U.S. healthcare costs are drugs. And as such, Vernon finds a 20% decrease in the price of drugs would only decrease healthcare expenditures by 2%. That's not going to drive down premiums that much. And they say price controls will decrease costs about that. But then second of all, according to Time Magazine, insurance companies do not pass on all savings to the beneficiaries. They keep premiums high as long as they think it's profitable. Thus, we urge you to negate it.
Actually, wait. Did we see that part about generic prices decreasing by 59%?
Yeah.
And also that investments would decrease in small
Yeah.
businesses?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then follow the start with Ron, okay?
On his overview about the developing world, we agree we can win one of two ways. First, we put terminal defense on their case. We save just one life in the U.S. That goes conceded. But second, we can turn their case, and we fully intend to do that. Then they concede our first thing about decreasing prices by 39%. So go to our second link about monopolies. They say a couple things. First, they tell you that generics are cheap in the status quo, but Americans still pay 6 times as much as other nations on drugs, meaning that a 57% decrease in generics really won't do anything. But second, they tell you that these schemes that they use, like pay delays and mergers and acquisitions, are profitable, so they wouldn't cut from them. You promise they do this with extra profit. So if you decrease their extra profit and these things cost a lot, they can't do as much anymore. Then they tell you that there's a new ban on pay delays, but they also do things like buying out small businesses and bribing doctors and marketing against generics. So they just shift to these tactics. That's why the PSM finds that the consolidation of the pharmaceutical industry has doubled in the last decade and is projected to continue. Then he tells you that it would hurt small businesses, but it would disproportionately hurt big businesses because they are the ones who charge the high prices with the patents. Generics are much lower prices, so they will not decrease as much, and they depend on volume sold rather than prices. And also, their evidence isn't even about small businesses; it's just about investment in general. Then the last thing they tell you is that mergers would increase. But even if there's more of an incentive to increase mergers, they don't have the physical capital to conduct those mergers, then the amount of their market share decreases. That's what happened in Europe after price controls. We can see his mitigation on our impact. If we just save one life here, once again, we can still win this round. Then, on their case, on their connection to the developing world. On case, the pharmaceutical industry only cares about profit and its profit maximizing in the status quo. They will argue that it's because of PR and humanitarianism. But approval of big pharma is at an all-time low. If they really wanted to seem charitable, they would just lower prices here. Instead, Schweitzer of UCLA explained that pharmaceutical companies maximize their profit by adjusting prices and tactics according to the buying power of the consumers, which means the only reason that they do R&D donations and sell drugs to us in the developing world is because it's profitable to do so. Specifically, the Guardian finds that these so-called charitable activities of the developing world are designed to gain a foothold in the emerging markets so that once these countries develop, they already have a massively profitable market there. For example, in Rwanda, Big Pharma went from donating drugs to selling them at a loss to selling them at a profit and eventually have a fully established market. This is key because at the point where it is in long-term profitable to do all the things we talk about in the developing world, it is fundamentally irrational for them to cut back on any of it. If they lose profit in the United States, it's a sunk cost. They wouldn't also lose profit in other countries and destroy their long-term prospects. This also functions as an implicit turn, since lost profit here would increase pressure on them to sell to the developing world because that's where they gain long-term profits. On the first link about R&D, start with terminal defense. The Endpoint Institute finds that pharmaceutical productivity has been declining and is projected to reach 0 by 2020. Moreover, the British Medical Journal finds that 90% of all new drugs provide little to no clinical advantages for patients, as pharmaceutical monopolies have no incentive to innovate since they control the market. Our case about deconstructing monopolies forces competition and innovation, which is why Stanford finds that European companies have discovered more drugs in the United States overall and in proportion to funding since 2000. On their second warrant about donations, Pinheiro of UChicago finds 3 reasons why donations are in their interest in either world. First, they're typically unused drugs, and it's cheaper for them to donate rather than paying for destruction here. The second, they provide significant tax deductions. And third, donations put certain drugs higher on insurance and prescription lists. On their third warrant about tiered pricing. First, they say that we sell drugs at a loss because the marginal costs are higher. But their methodology is terrible because it incorrectly defines marginal costs by including fixed investments in the United States, like R&D spending in the calculation. But since these investments happen either way, the actual marginal cost is just the amount needed to produce 1 pill of vaccine, which literally costs cents compared to only $3 to $10 in the developing world right now. Which is why Johns Hopkins finds that the United States is making profits in the developing world right now. Even if there was a 96% reduction in the price of the drug, the company did not take a loss. But second, our overview links in. Even if they win that it's unprofitable now, it creates a profitable market in the long run. That's why prices in Europe are 1/6 what they are in America, and they're still profitable. But finally, we link in. The Guardian finds that due to the influence of large pharmaceutical monopolies, when the United States forms trade deals with developing countries, they require the domestic government to transfer all intellectual property rights to the United States, meaning they can only buy from us. This extends U.S. monopoly globally and prevents other countries from developing generics, which is why 1.4 billion people cannot afford the patented drugs needed to save their lives.
So before Crossfire, can I see Johns Hopkins card? Or and a card that says the marginal costs are missing out.
That seems right.
Yeah, where does it say it is miscalculated? Like, you can't just assert it.
First is Johns Hopkins, second is the partner evidence.
registered card, which says that like they price low to maximize profit because of the buying power of the population. Correct? So what does Schweizer? This is like one model Schweizer said they could be using.
Yeah.
What does Schweizer end up concluding at the end of the study? It's actually the same card in our case, Commonwealth. It's the same outcome study.
Okay, I'm sure you're gonna tell me.
He concludes that they are losing money in the developing world and they are not making a profit.
Okay, we have
Explicitly,
other
the
evidence
part
that
that you
says-
say, no, but I'm saying you literally cite a card that says one possible model of pricing would be maximizing profit. And then at the end of the study says we conclude they don't use this model and they use a humanitarian maximizing model, not a profit maximizing
They're
model.
making profits right now.
Okay,
and
but
you
like,
can decrease
so
prices
we
by
should have,
96%, they would still be making profits.
like,
Can I see a
your
question?
card does not say that. It does not. It says that they are decreasing price by 96%. It does not say they can
No,
make
no,
a
it says
profit.
that there was an instance, in like South Africa where they
Oh,
decreased
great.
prices
So in South Africa, there was one
No.
instance in which
The
low
whole
prices
card-
led to
the
profit,
card
and
talks
my
about-
card tells you overall in the entire developing world, they're charging for low marginal cost. Then you just say, I incorrectly calculate marginal cost. Then we ask you for a card, and you say, oh, we don't have a card for that. So like,
Sorry,
like
what?
how
Why
do
did you
you
say
know
that?
that we
I showed you the card.
I asked for a card about incorrectly calculating marginal
Yeah, I
cost.
showed that to you in your own evidence.
Like, no, you didn't. Okay, well,
Obviously,
we'll look at
your
that.
author isn't going to say I incorrectly
Yeah, but I'd
calculated
like to say,
marginal
but
cost.
like it doesn't
He
calculate
did,
it.
though.
But he
Can I ask you a question?
Okay.
Okay, so what is this like World Trade Organization waiver called?
I don't know.
The Doha Declaration, and has it ever been implemented or
Like,
enforced?
our evidence is September 2018, and it says it is going into force.
No. It was like a thing for like a decade. Like a
Okay,
few
great,
decades.
but mine is
so when
September
has it ever been
2018.
enforced?
Mine says in September 2018 it is now being enforced.
I get that. So how is it being enforced?
How is it being enforced?
Yeah.
As in drug companies are waiving their patent rights. I also have evidence about
Okay, well the United States isn't necessarily going against that, but our guardian evidence is
that. Our evidence says the
specifically
United
about
States.
how the United States gets
Nah, your evidence is old. Mine from September 2018 says
That's not a very
okay,
good
wait,
argument,
let me,
especially
no,
since
wait,
our
let me
evidence says
explain.
that this Doha Declaration does not violate what we are doing, because what we're saying, we're not just using our patent rights and extending to those countries. We're saying, yeah, like we can trade with you, but we're not going to trade with you if you don't take our
Okay,
patent.
two things.
So we're not like violating.
Wait,
the
okay,
World
two
Trade
things.
Organization.
One, my evidence explicitly says the United States supports
So what
like
changed?
this current
Can you
waiver.
tell me what changed?
Like
in the Doha Declaration?
Like I don't know.
No.
Like,
In the Doha
my-
Declaration.
In the mine says they created a new waiver September 2018 to waive patents the U.S. is on
It's
board.
not a
Even if
new
you win
waiver.
that-
You just said
Even
it's
if
starting
you
to
win
be
that, you
enforced.
never interact with the fact that 95% of the drugs they need are off patent. So you can maybe get an
Well,
impact
we
like
tell you
the
that
5% of drugs.
1.4 billion people are being affected by the pharmaceutical monopolies and what's happening right now. So clearly your 95% card isn't very good.
1.4% of billion people are affected. We tell you overall,
1.4
95% of the drugs they need are off patent. That card might say generally there are people affected by patents, but we tell you overall,
it's very
95% of the drugs they need.
It's
Ours
very
is more
specific.
explicit. 95% of the drugs they need do not currently have a patent on them. That means that
That's
like you
fine.
still gain access.
That's fine. You have a question?
How you doing? 5 seconds.
Yeah, I'm good.
We're taking this.
Marginal cost. It's like the part of the study that like technically accounts for fixed cost.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I'll do it. Where does it say anything about marginal cost? Can you like highlight marginal cost here?
It just says it doesn't take into account R&D.
Wait, I'll look at it again, but like, can I see it again? Okay. We have 25 seconds left.
First, they just concede the weighing. If we win the developing world, we're winning this one. We're winning the round. They tell you that the profit maximizing in the status quo, they say this twice your cause, it says like marginal costs are incorrectly calculated. Nowhere in their index does it even say the word marginal cost. Overall, it tells you that they are charging below the distribution cost, which means they're actually losing a profit. Our evidence literally says verbatim, they are making zero profits in the developing world to maximize welfare. They're charging 3% of the price of drugs as opposed to like what they charge in the United States, and that has been increasing global access to drugs by 4 to 7 times. The status quo is really great. That's why 61% of people in the developing world currently have access to essential medicine. Why are they charging so low? Because they want a long-term foothold in these markets. However, what we tell you is their revenue is declining by 26% overnight, which they concede, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of investor pressure to recoup those losses in the short term. That actually has historical precedent. When we saw AstraZeneca, a really large pharmaceutical firm, in 2010 said that they're going to like cure malaria, cure tuberculosis. They poured tens of millions of dollars into curing these diseases. Then in 2014, they had a bad year financially. They cut all their initiatives for the developing world. Prefer this to like their analysis about South Africa that isn't really well fleshed out. And Flynn tells you empirically that when we see revenues decreasing and prices jacked up in the developing world, 51% of people in that region are going to be losing access to drugs. This outweighs anything they can possibly say in America for 2 reasons. First, on the scope, we're affecting tens of millions of the most vulnerable people in the world. And second, on magnitude, because if you cannot have a drug in the developing world, where else are you going to turn to for treatment? There are fewer hospitals, doctors, and health clinics. These people have to live with their conditions and suffer from their conditions. And onto patents, 2 responses. First, there's a waiver passed by the World Trade Organization that literally absolves the developing world from having to follow patents until 2032. This evidence from September 2018 at post-state fairs. Second, 95% of the most essential medicines for the developing world are already at off patents. Patents really don't matter here. And second, we can just turn their case on mergers. What we tell you is that mergers cost no money. It's just 2 companies deciding to pool their resources. They don't need finances to do that. That's why in 2008, after a major financial crisis, there was a spike in mergers as these large companies that lost a lot of money wanted to pool together to increase their resources, meaning that monopolies are actually going to be increasing in their world. And for that reason, we strongly urge a negating.
Oh wait, yeah. Actually, could we see the WPO? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
like what's new about it?
I'll show you. Like, I don't like.
You said there was something new, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I'll show you.
Yes.
Alright. Alright, our case, sort of the weighing stuff. Our case, and then their case. we concede and win, but we also win terminal defense. In their case, we're going to win the round. On our case, they said three things. First of all, they say that mergers and acquisition are going to increase, but the mergers and acquisition that they're talking about are not the same thing as Nushin are talking about. They're talking about two companies voluntarily merging together. We say that big businesses are buying up small businesses, and also should realize that mergers and acquisitions have nothing to do with, like, there's more things that they do. For example, bribing off doctors, pay to delay, and just marketing against companies. Insofar as that's true, if we decrease the prices of these big businesses, we are going to win the round. Because we say, when you decrease the profit margins, decrease the capital they use to exploit these market theories, which is why the Breck analysis says that empirically, in countries where we did impose price controls, monopoly market share decreased by 37%, leading to a 55% increase in the use of generics. They say that the WTO has imposed a waiver and that 95% of drugs are off patent. First of all, on the waiver issue, it is the same exact waiver that they imposed decades ago. There's no probability that this is going to be enforced. Second, on the issue of 95% of drugs are off patent, we still say that 1.4 billion people abroad are still affected. If we win our case, we are going to win the round. On their case, there's three things to extend. The first of which is the clean turn on the research and development that says that there's zero productivity by 2020 because monopolies are controlling the majority of the market, and as a result, 90% of drugs have no clinical value. You deconstruct the monopoly, you lead to more innovation. That's a clean, conceded turn on their case. Then, on the third one about affordability, this is where the terminal defense acts of the weighing mechanism is going to come in. They just say that there's a marginal decrease in cost, but they drop the Johns Hopkins University evidence, which they call for, that says that they're selling abroad at a profit. Think about it. They're trying to establish a market, which means there's going to be an increase in profitability. They say that the short-term outweighs is going to scare off investors. That is not true because, for example, in like Europe, they have 1/6 of the price as we do in America, but they still have insane profitability, which means that their argument just simply isn't rooted in the status quo. And lastly, it's also just like the Guardian turn that says that 1.4 billion people do not have access to these drugs because of extended IP laws. They have to buy them in the United States at ridiculously high prices. You deconstruct the monopoly, you lower prices for everyone around the world.
Wait, could I just see? Do you have evidence that the waiver is not enforced?
I mean, our evidence is not there.
Yeah, try to see the waiver is not enforced.
Alright, so on your waiver, it's only talking about India. It's saying in India,
Yeah, I was talking about developing.
Right, it's talking about a waiver that would allow developing countries to purchase patented drugs like from like other country, India and
It's talking
Highland.
about how they would not have to. They would be exempt.
Right. It's saying they couldn't purchase cheap patented drugs copied from India and Thailand. Like our evidence is like different. It's talking about.
The Doha Declaration is the World Trade Organization. Like it says
I
that.
know it's in
It
the
says that
World
developing
Trade
countries
Organization. I'm
are
saying the
exempt.
waiver we're talking about is different.
we're talking about like
No. It's the same thing because it exempts. You said it yourself. It exempts developing countries from American patents.
No,
Yeah,
you're the one
that
talking
we're
about.
following that.
Your one is talking about whether or not they can
It's talking
purchase
about India.
purchase
Talking
drugs
about
from
Because
India
we
and Thailand.
extended our patent laws into India, so they cannot afford it. And it also says that the 1.4
Right, but
billion
India is not the developing world. We're saying, right, okay, India can't like produce like cheap patented drugs copied, but we're saying that like still that the patents are waived in like the lower income
No,
countries.
it's about
We're
all
saying your
developing
evidence isn't
countries.
specific to the U.S. We're saying like the
No,
World
it is.
Declaration, which applies to the U.S., says that U.S.
It says
patented drugs
the
sold in the
charity
developing world
accuses the
don't
U.S.
apply.
of bullying developing countries into not using the measures in the Doha
Yeah,
Declaration.
so like
but
India,
we still broke
yeah,
it.
so the Indian pharmaceutical industry like can't copy drugs.
It
Sure,
also says
but in like Mozambique
no.
they
It
can't.
also
That's
says
our impact.
1.4 billion people in developing countries such as India. It's not only
Okay,
talking
but like
about
even if
India.
1.4 billion people are affected, that's pretty vague. I think we need to look to like, do they have the
That's
medicines they need?
vague.
Like yes,
That's like an
affected.
exact
What does
number.
affected mean?
1.4
No, but I'm
billion
saying,
people, they can't
what
buy
does
drugs.
affected mean?
They're affected.
There are 1.4 exactly. So there are 1.4 billion people in countries that like need that like that have to follow patent laws. Great,
Wait,
but we tell you how much of their medicines actually are on patent.
But like
You've never interacted with the fact that only
No.
5% of their
Even
medicines
if
actually
they're
need
not
patent.
on patent, 1.4 billion people can't
Are
afford it.
affected.
wait,
Are
but
affected.
more specifically, what the World Health Organization tells you, this card is probably really excellent, right? There it is, you can call for it. It says that 95% of the drugs needed by people in the developing world are off patent, period. That
Okay,
means your impact
you
of
keep on
patents is
saying
just
that,
5%.
and we keep on saying 1.4
you
billion.
should
Like,
call for
This is
this.
not like a
I also
warrant.
think needed is more important because if they can get a drug if they can get a drug off patent that they need versus having
Ours
a drug
says
that's less important
1.42
to them.
billion people
Like, I
can't
mean,
afford the
look at
drugs
whether
that
they have
they
the-
needed. It says the exact same thing as you guys. I'm
Right.
literally reading off of it.
Right, but we tell you that like you have to look comparatively. Yours says that 1.4% of people can't afford the drugs.
They
We
need
tell you that like 90, right, exactly. But we tell you 95% of those drugs are still off patent, and that 61% of the people still can't afford drugs in developing.
No, no, your
I
evidence
think
is
better
not
comparative
talking
analysis.
about our evidence. That's definitely not
Our evidence
true.
is talking about the situation holistically in the developing world
So
from the
is ours.
WHO.
I mean,
Yours is
we're
saying
like going
like
back and forth. This is
people
like
are
literally-
affected on
this is like
patent
not
drugs
productive
because
at all.
of like India, right?
No.
I mean, okay. And what we would say is like, if you can see that like access goes down, or if access did go down, would it really matter? Like,
Sorry, what?
if access goes down, then
Yes, it matters.
why would it matter? Like, if suddenly like investors want to jack up prices, even on patented
we're
drugs,
way
it still
over
hurts
time.
people, right?
I never know.
Okay.
I'm gonna take this. My phone is ready.
Okay.
So remember that the developing world is going to be the most important and that prices are going to be a prerequisite to anyone being able to access drugs in the first place. First of all, they just tell you they are maximizing profit right now, but our evidence is very explicit. They're charging below their marginal cost, and that as a result, they are not making a profit there. They are losing money. It tells you they're charging just 3% of what they charge in America, meaning that there is a 4 to 7 times increase in global access to drugs. Then we tell you they are uncontested that they lose 26% of their revenue. They just say that they're still going to look to the long term. We tell you investors are inherently short term. They can't just wait for an entire country to develop for them to then get their portfolio to go up. That's decades from now. We tell you they look quarter to quarter, and as a result, they pressure the Mello evidence is very explicit that they will then increase prices in the developing world to make up for lost returns, and because they are losing money right now there. And we tell you as a result, there will be according to Flynn, because of high inequality in these countries, when they maximize profit, there will be a 51% decrease in access for drugs. We can tell you we give you better historical precedent than they do, which is AstraZeneca, a large pharmaceutical company, where in 2010 they launched lots of initiatives to give out free malaria, tuberculosis, and neglected tropical disease initiatives, and in 2014 they cut all of those initiatives specifically because they lost profit. That's a much better example than their general analysis that they wouldn't do it. We give you the specifics and we tell you, and we give you their own justification, which is that they were trying to make up for lost profit. This is clearly the biggest impact in the round. It affects tens of millions of people who do not have access to other types of treatment, who now will be forced to not get these treatments. Then, on their side of the flow, they try to link it in two ways. One, because they tell you that like patents go away. We tell you that we say you increase prices on all patents and non-patented drugs to see a bigger impact. We also tell you there's a waiver that extends to 2033, exempting them from that. But then we also, more importantly, tell you that 95% of the drugs they need are already off patent. Even if 1.4 billion people are affected, we tell you the essential drugs they need are already off patent. But regardless, we also tell you that we turn it with mergers. We tell you they increase the amount of mergers because they want to pull together just like after 2008. They just tell you it's not the same type of mergers. We tell you as long as we increase some type of merger that increase market share, overall, the amount of monopolies remains constant. They can't link in via patents. Thus, we urge you to negate.
Can I be the part of the 95% are the ones that they need?
Yeah.
Just the part that says that we have 6 seconds. Just the part that says that, you know, something you said, Grandpa, sorry.
Yes.
Like, where does it say the ones that they need?
Essential.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's fine, buddy.
I'm going to be starting off on their case, and then coming back to ours. on their warrant about R&D, they drop and concede the whole round, the turn that we put. We tell you that when monopolies control the market, there is no incentive to innovate. If you break down monopolies, you increase innovation. That's what happened in Europe. They developed more drugs for overall and in proportion to funding than the United States. This outweighs their case because it also links into access. If there's more innovation in the United States that makes drugs cheaper all over the world, that's a clean link into our case and their case about the developing world. Then, on the warrant that they actually do go for, they tell you that they're not making profit, they're selling at a loss. Our Johns Hopkins evidence is also very specific that says they are making profit in the developing world. The reason that they might be losing profit is in the short term, but in the long term, they're trying to make a market. They tell you that investors only care about the short term, so they'll pull out and pressure them to focus on the short term. But we tell you that investors wouldn't care about price controls in the short term, like in Europe. Prices are 1/6 what they are here, but they're still making profit, and the pharmaceutical industry has higher profit margins than literally any other industry. They don't care about profit margins that much in the case of price controls, meaning that this is terminal defense on their case. Their warrant makes no sense at all. But on our case, it's another very easy place to vote for us. They go for a couple turns. First, they go that mergers increase. The kind of mergers that they talk about are good. Two companies agreeing to merge. The kind of mergers we talk about are big companies buying out small companies because they have no choice. And also, it's not just about mergers. It's about pay delays and bribing doctors and marketing against generics, which is why we still link into the Breck analysis that tells you when you decrease their profit, they decrease their market share by 37% and increase use of generics by 55%. This outweighs because we tell you from the Guardian analysis that 1.4 billion people do not have access to the drugs they need because of American monopolies extending into developing countries. They tell you that this waiver was extended. Our evidence is about how that waiver is not enforced at all. You can call for it if you want. They tell you that 95% of the drugs that are needed are not affected. Our evidence says that 1.4 billion people do not have access to the drugs they need. It's specific to patents. It gives you a very clear contextualization. This outweighs their case on probability. This link in outweighs their link in because we are depending on the competition of the whole market. They're just trying to look to the goodwill of one monopoly.